You keep telling yourself it's about the substance, the drink, the pill, the scroll, the secret ritual you swear you'll stop tomorrow. But watch the timing. The craving doesn't only show up when life is hard. It often shows up when you're about to grow. Right when you start feeling clearer. Right when you tell the truth to yourself. Right when your spirit gets a little taller inside your chest. If that has happened to you, you've probably asked the wrong question. You've asked, why can't I control myself? The better question is, what part of me feels threatened by my freedom? That's not random. That's the ego. Not the ego as an insult. Not the ego as vanity. The ego as a survival program, an identity manager, a system that keeps you consistent, predictable, legible to yourself. It doesn't exist to make you happy. It exists to make you the same person you've been, because the same feels safe, even when it hurts. And once you see that, addiction stops looking like a simple craving and starts looking like a strategy the ego uses to prevent a deeper shift. Because spiritual awakening is not just a bright idea, it's a rearrangement of identity. It changes your relationship to pain, to pleasure, to time, to other people, to your own conscience. That rearrangement threatens the ego's position as the one in charge. So here's the lens we're using today. Addiction is often not a love affair with pleasure. It is a defense of an old identity, a mechanism that protects the version of you built around survival, pain, and coping. It's vicio como mecanismo de defensa da identidade antiga. And when you start waking up, the ego feels that awakening like a threat. Not a threat to your body, but a threat to your story. In this video, we're going to map the whole mechanism. How the ego turns relief into a ritual. How it uses shame as a leash. How it hijacks your attention right when you're close to change. And what it looks like to disarm it without turning your inner world into a battlefield. Stay close, because once you see the structure, the craving stops sounding like truth. It starts sounding like a frightened guard trying to protect a kingdom you've already outgrown. And when you hear it that way, you can finally choose differently. And if you're worried this will be heavy, good. Heavy means real. Real means there's something here worth waking up to. The ego isn't your enemy. It's a survival program. The ego is not your essence. It's your strategy. It's the part of you that learned early on how to stay safe in the world you were given. It studied what earned love, what triggered rejection, what invited punishment, what caused abandonment, what made you invisible enough to avoid conflict, and it built a version of you that could survive those conditions. That's why the ego is stubborn. It's a museum of old solutions. Some of them were brilliant at the time. They got you through what you couldn't control. But the ego doesn't naturally update. It keeps running the same programs, even when you've grown beyond the environment that created them. Look at the ego like you would look at an old security system in a house you no longer live in. It still scans for the same dangers. It still triggers the same alarms. It still locks the doors the same way. And if you start opening new windows in the mind, new emotions, new possibilities, it reacts as if you're inviting a thief, even when you're inviting your own healing. So when change approaches, the ego doesn't interpret it as improvement. It interprets it as danger. Because change destabilizes identity. If you stop behaving like the old you, the ego doesn't know how to protect you. It can't predict the social outcome. It can't predict your emotions. It can't predict the future. And for the ego, unpredictability feels like death. That's why spiritual awakening can trigger backlash. When you become more aware, you become less controllable by your old loops. You stop reacting on autopilot. You start noticing what you feel and why you feel it. And the ego thinks, we are losing control. It doesn't hate you. It fears losing its job. Addiction becomes the ego's emergency exit, a guaranteed method to regulate your inner world quickly, a ritual that restores the familiar identity in minutes. The ego isn't attached to the substance. It's attached to the function. Immediate relief, immediate certainty, immediate return to the same self. And once you recognize the ego as a protector, you stop making the mistake of arguing with it using logic alone. Protectors don't listen to logic when they feel danger. They listen to proof. You will give it proof later, through small experiences where you face discomfort and survive it. But first, you need to see what the protector is truly defending. It's defending identity. And that leads to the next truth. This is why the ego reacts so strongly to simple practices like meditation, honesty, or sobriety. Those practices create gaps. Gaps create awareness. Awareness reveals the difference between what you truly are and what you learned to be. And that difference threatens the ego's claim to authority. Addiction as identity glue. If I stop, who am I? Here's a question most people avoid because it's too honest. If you take away the addiction, what happens to your identity? Not your behavior, your identity. Many habits become psychological glue. They hold together a particular story of who you are, why you are the way you are, and what you're allowed to expect from life. The ego uses that story to predict the world. The story is a map, and losing the map can feel more terrifying than staying in a painful place. So addiction becomes a stabilizer of meaning. It gives the day a rhythm. It gives the mind a reason. It gives the nervous system an immediate solution. It also gives you a label that quietly explains everything. I'm like this because of my habit. I'm stuck because of my pattern. I can't because of my addiction. That label is not always an excuse. Sometimes it's a refuge. It lets the ego remain the same person while life keeps moving. Some addictions preserve the identity of the victim. If you remain trapped, life remains explainable. You never have to risk responsibility for a different future. Other addictions preserve the identity of the rebel, where self-destruction disguises itself as freedom. Some preserve the identity of the overachiever, who can't slow down, because slowing down would reveal what the achievement was hiding. And some preserve the identity of the broken one, not because you enjoy suffering, but because brokenness can become a shield. If you believe you are damaged, you don't have to risk being capable. You don't have to risk the disappointment of trying and failing as a new person. The ego prefers a predictable wound to an unpredictable power. There's also the caretaker who collapses in private, using addiction as a secret room where strength finally stops. And the invisible one, who learned that being fully seen can be dangerous, so the ritual keeps you blurred enough to avoid exposure. Now listen carefully. The ego would rather be miserable and consistent than free and undefined. Because undefined means you have to choose. Undefined means you can't hide behind the old script. Undefined means the world might meet you differently, and you might meet yourself differently. That's an identity earthquake. When you quit, you don't just miss the substance, you miss the script. Your day loses its familiar punctuation. Your emotions lose their predictable exit. And the ego whispers, "See, without this, you won't know who you are." That whisper is not prophecy. It is a threat from an old identity that fears replacement. Because if you keep the addiction, you keep the story. And if you keep the story, you never have to face the blank page of becoming someone new. So the ego doesn't ask, "Will this destroy me?" It asks, "Will this keep me recognizable?" And this is why it uses tactics that are less obvious than craving. It uses attention. It uses urgency. It uses a loop. The ego's 3 tricks: numb, distract, reset. The ego doesn't keep addiction alive by shouting. It keeps it alive by guiding your attention. It has 3 moves that repeat so often they can look like personality. First, numb. Numbing isn't just avoidance of pain. It is avoidance of information. Emotions are messages. They carry truth about boundaries, needs, grief, desire, fear. The ego doesn't want those messages delivered because delivered messages demand change. So it lowers the volume. It offers anesthesia. The relief feels like kindness, but it is also censorship. This is why the urge can feel compassionate. It often arrives when your system is overwhelmed. The protector says, "Let me take the edge off." And it works. For a moment, it works. That's why the ego trusts it. But notice what else happens. The moment you numb, you stop hearing the part of you that was trying to mature. You stop hearing the signal that would have guided you toward healing. Second, distract. The ego understands something simple. If you stay present long enough, the urge transforms. So it doesn't want you present. It wants you scattered. It pulls you into scrolling, fantasies, arguments, future worries. old memories, anything that fragments awareness. A fragmented mind can't observe patterns, and if you can't observe the pattern, you can't interrupt it. Distraction also has a spiritual cost. When awareness is fractured, you cannot feel the subtle movement of consciousness. You can't hear that quiet inner voice that says, "This is not you." The ego keeps you busy so you don't notice you're asleep. Third, reset. The ego treats discomfort like an emergency that must be solved now. It wants immediate resolution, because immediacy prevents maturation. When you reset quickly, you never stay with the sensation long enough for it to teach you. So the ritual becomes a button you press whenever reality feels too sharp. Numb the signal, distract the witness, reset the discomfort. That's the loop. And inside that loop, the space where a new identity would form never gets a chance to exist. Once you see these tricks, the next step is unsettling, because when you stop using them, another kind of withdrawal appears. Not just chemical withdrawal, but existential withdrawal. The withdrawal of identity. And you can see these tricks in miniature. You feel a tightness in the chest. The mind refuses to name it. Numb. You open your phone without deciding. Distract. You tell yourself, just to get through this moment. Reset. The ego makes the process feel automatic so you never realize you just agreed to remain the same. Here's the subtle shift that matters. The moment you can say, "I'm being pulled into numb, distract, reset," you've already stepped outside the loop. The witness has arrived, and the ego can negotiate with many things, but it cannot negotiate with clear seeing. The moment you try to change. The withdrawal of identity. Most people expect cravings when they quit. What they don't expect is disorientation, a strange emptiness, a raw openness, a feeling like you don't know what to do with yourself now. That is the withdrawal of identity. When the ritual disappears, the ego loses a structure it depended on. The habit used to organize time. It used to manage emotion. It used to provide a predictable ending to discomfort. Without it, your inner world feels unedited, louder, slower, more honest. And this is the moment the ego tries to trick you with interpretation. It will say, "This proves you need it." It will say, "This restlessness is your real nature." It will say, "You were better when you were numb." But the truth is simpler. You are meeting the reality that was postponed. It can feel like boredom at first, but boredom is often grief in disguise. It can feel like anxiety, but anxiety is often unprocessed emotion finally entering the room. It can feel like emptiness, but emptiness is often just space without the old noise. The ego interprets this as failure because it has one rule: discomfort equals danger. But your awakening self learns a new rule: discomfort can be the doorway through which identity changes. So in this phase, the real work is not heroic. It's patient. You stay. You breathe. You let the feeling exist without calling it an emergency. You let time pass without resetting. And each time you do that, you teach your nervous system something radical. I can feel this and still be safe. The emptiness isn't proof you need the habit. The emptiness is the space where a new self can be built. And once you accept that, you can finally ask the question the ego has been avoiding for years. What was the addiction really protecting me from feeling? Because there is a payoff hidden inside every relapse. This is why early recovery can feel like you are meeting yourself for the first time. Without the old ritual, your emotions don't arrive politely. They arrive like weather, sometimes heavy, sometimes unpredictable, sometimes strangely pure. And the ego will try to convince you that this weather is proof that you are unfit for freedom. But storms are not arguments. They are clearing events. If you can hold the identity withdrawal without running, something remarkable happens. The mind starts expanding into the space you created. You begin to sense preferences you haven't felt in years. You begin to notice what kind of people drain you. You begin to hear your own no. And the ego notices that too, which is why it seeks the next easiest lever. The hidden payoff. The hidden payoff. What the ego gets to avoid addiction is often the ego's way of avoiding initiation. It buys immediate relief by postponing emotional truth. The payoff isn't pleasure. The payoff is avoidance. Watch the timing of your urges. and you'll see the pattern. They intensify when you're about to do something that would change you. A real conversation. A boundary. A risk. A quiet moment where you might hear what you actually want. Intimacy is avoided. Real intimacy requires being seen, not performed. It requires vulnerability without armor. The ego prefers controlled distance because distance reduces risk. If you stay half-hidden, you never have to risk being rejected for your real self. Responsibility is avoided, not responsibility as guilt, but responsibility as authorship. When you're awake, you can't pretend you don't know what you're doing. You start sensing your power, and power demands choices. Choices create consequences. The ego prefers excuses because excuses keep identity stable. Grief is avoided. Grief dissolves old identities. If you grieve what happened, what you missed, what you became to survive, you won't be the same person afterward. The ego fears grief because grief cleans the story. It releases attachments to the past version of you. Anger is avoided. Clean anger reveals boundaries. It says, that was not okay. It says, I will not tolerate this. The ego often sedates anger because anger leads to action, and action leads to change. Silence is avoided. Silence is where the deeper self speaks. The ego hates quiet because quiet exposes the pattern. In silence, your conscience has room. Your intuition has room. And those parts of you do not negotiate with self-betrayal. Self-respect is avoided too, because self-respect demands alignment. It forces you to stop bargaining with how you're treated and how you treat yourself. And perhaps most of all, the ego avoids being fully seen by your own awareness. Addiction keeps you foggy enough to delay truth. Tomorrow becomes a religion, later becomes the altar. The ego survives on postponed reality. Once you see the payoff, you stop romanticizing the habit. You start reading it like a contract with fine print, and this is where the ego brings out its strongest weapon to keep you from tearing up the contract. Shame. There's another payoff that hides underneath all of these. Control. Addiction gives the ego the illusion that it can manage reality by managing sensation. If you can change how you feel instantly, you don't have to change what you tolerate. You don't have to change who you're surrounded by. You don't have to change the direction of your life. You just change the weather inside, and then you return to the same landscape. And that's why the ego defends the habit, even when it's destroying you. Because destruction is slow, and awakening is immediate. Awakening requires you to see the whole truth at once. The ego would rather pay 1,000 small prices than face one big revelation. The ego's favorite weapon. Shame as a leash. Shame is not merely what happens after relapse. Shame is often what pulls you back into relapse. It turns an event into an identity. It turns a mistake into a verdict. The ego loves shame because shame shrinks you. It isolates you. It convinces you that you don't deserve a new life. And if you don't deserve it, you won't reach for it. You'll stay inside the familiar loop and call it realism. Notice the language shame uses. It doesn't say you made a harmful choice. It says, this is who you are. It doesn't say you fell into a pattern. It says, you will always be this way. Shame compresses your complexity into one label, and labels are how the ego keeps control. Shame also breaks connection. When you feel ashamed, you hide. You stop reaching out. You stop telling the truth. And isolation is the perfect fuel for addiction, because isolation makes the ritual feel like your only companion. Even more subtly, shame can feel like honesty, like you're finally telling the truth about yourself. But shame is not truth. Shame is a distorted lens that takes pain and turns it into identity. And the ego prefers self-hatred over self-respect because self-respect is destabilizing. Self-respect leads to boundaries. Boundaries lead to new relationships. New relationships require a new identity. The ego would rather keep you ashamed than watch you mature. So the goal isn't to eradicate shame forever. The goal is to stop obeying it as guidance. When shame rises, see it clearly. This is the ego trying to keep the old story alive. And that recognition sets the stage for the real inner conflict. Because you are not one voice. You are at least two. It helps to separate shame from guilt. Guilt says, I did something that harmed me or someone else. Guilt can guide repair. Shame says, I am the harm. Shame does not guide repair. Shame guides hiding. That's why it's such a reliable leash. The moment you feel shame, the ego tries to make you disappear. It says, don't speak. Don't ask for help. Don't be seen like this. And if you disappear from connection, the addiction becomes your substitute for connection. It becomes the only place you feel soothed, even while it is the thing hurting you. The two selves in conflict, the awakening self versus the protector. Self. You've been told you're fighting yourself, but the deeper truth is that you're divided, not defective. There is an awakening self in you that wants clarity. It wants presence. It wants to stop living in half-light. It wants to feel without needing to escape. This part is quiet, persistent, and strangely brave. It keeps returning, even after you disappoint yourself, like a deeper intelligence that refuses to die. And there is the protector self, the ego as guardian. It remembers when your feelings were too big, too fast, and you had no safe place to hold them. It remembers moments when honesty cost you love, when vulnerability was punished, when you were left alone with emotions you couldn't name. So it learned an emergency solution. Always keep an exit. Addiction became that exit. So understand the conflict correctly. The awakening self wants truth. The protector wants safety. The awakening self is willing to walk through discomfort to become someone new. The protector believes discomfort is danger, so it pulls you back toward familiarity. This is why you can genuinely want to heal and still relapse. It's not hypocrisy. It's two agendas colliding. One part says, we cannot keep living like this. Another part says, we cannot survive the feelings behind that change. This is why war doesn't work. When you attack the protector, it escalates. It recruits stronger cravings, stronger rationalizations, stronger shame. Because from its perspective, you're trying to remove the only shield it trusts. The way forward is integration. You acknowledge the protector's mission without obeying its outdated method. You say, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to protect me. But the life you're protecting is too small for who I'm becoming. You don't shame the protector for being afraid. You teach it slowly, that the present is safer than the past. And when you speak like that, cravings begin to reveal their real message. Not, I need this, but I'm scared. Not, I want to ruin everything, but I don't know how to hold this feeling. That's when you're ready to disarm the ego without fighting it. If you want to picture this, imagine the protector as a younger version of you holding a flashlight in a dark hallway. It learned to scan for danger. It learned to assume the worst. It learned to keep you busy, numb, and guarded. When you move toward awakening, that younger part thinks you are walking into the same hallway again. So you don't crush it. You lead it. You tell it the truth with steadiness. I'm not asking you to vanish. I'm asking you to trust a new method. You can protect me by helping me stay present. You can keep me safe by helping me choose boundaries, not escape. You can help me survive by allowing me to become. This is how the protector relaxes. It doesn't relax because you yell at it. It relaxes because it experiences reality and discovers it is not the past. How to disarm the ego without fighting it. If you try to defeat the ego, it defends itself. So you use precision instead of aggression. Start by naming the mechanism in real time. The moment the urge rises, tell the truth. This is ego survival. This is the protector trying to restore the old identity. Naming reduces the hypnotic power of craving. The urge stops being destiny and becomes a process you can observe. Next, create a gap. Not a lifetime promise, a delay. Not yet. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, long enough to remember that cravings are waves. The ego depends on immediacy because immediacy prevents awareness. A gap turns reaction into choice. In that gap, your job is not to be heroic. Your job is to stay curious. Ask what came first, the urge or the feeling. Most of the time, the feeling came first. The urge is the ego's proposed solution. When you keep curiosity alive, you keep consciousness online. Then replace the function, not the object. Ask what the urge is trying to accomplish. Is it trying to mute anxiety, erase loneliness, silence anger? If you meet the function directly, the ritual becomes less necessary. Slow the body down. Exhale longer than you inhale. Loosen the jaw. Let the nervous system learn regulation without surrender. If it's loneliness, reach for contact before you reach for escape. A message, a walk, a human voice. If it's anger, give it a clean channel. Write the boundary you've been swallowing. Speak it aloud until it sounds real. Finally, meet the feeling the ego was silencing. This is the spiritual technology. Sit with the sensation and locate it in the body. Give it permission to exist without rushing to fix it. Ask it what it's protecting. Ask it what it wants you to admit. Huxley once played with the idea that the mind filters reality to keep us functional. Addiction is a brutal filter. You don't need to smash the mind. You need to widen perception carefully until you no longer need escape to survive your own inner life. Do this consistently and something changes. The protector still speaks, but it speaks more softly, because it is no longer the only voice in the room. One more piece makes this work easier. Track the pattern like a scientist, without hatred. Notice the hour, the place, the trigger, the emotion. Not to obsess, but to illuminate. The ego depends on vagueness. When you make the pattern specific, you remove the ego's favorite hiding place. And remember, you're not trying to become a person who never feels tempted. You're becoming a person who can feel temptation and still remain present. That is the real upgrade. That is what the ego can't imitate. A simple rule helps when the mind starts bargaining. Never debate with the urge. Translate it. The urge is the ego speaking in sensation. Translation turns sensation into meaning. Meaning turns panic into comprehension. And don't underestimate the power of the first 60 seconds. If you can keep your hands still and your breathing slow for 1 minute, you interrupt the trance. The ego needs motion. It needs you to reach, click, pour, light, bite, swallow. Stillness is the opposite of the ritual. Stillness is the doorway to awareness. The new identity contract. Who you become when you don't escape. After you stop escaping, the ego will try one last lie. If it feels uncomfortable at first, it must be wrong. But clarity is often uncomfortable because it's honest. You're stepping out of a trance and the light can feel harsh. Time slows down. Small irritations feel louder. Silence feels heavier. And you might think you're getting worse, but you're not getting worse. You're becoming available to reality again. This is where you need a new contract, not motivation, a contract with your future self. The contract begins like this. Discomfort is not an emergency. It is information. It is initiation. When you feel raw, interpret it as sensitivity returning, not evidence of failure. When you feel the urge, translate it. Ask what it is trying to protect. Ask what it is trying to avoid. Then return to awareness and stop waiting to feel ready. The ego loves readiness because readiness can be postponed forever. New identity is built by repetition, not intensity. Small decisions that teach the nervous system a new truth. I can feel this, and I will not abandon myself. I can be lonely and stay present. I can be anxious and remain honest. I can be bored and still be awake. You may also grieve the old identity. The old self was familiar, even when it was painful. It knew how to fail in the same way. It knew how to explain itself. A new identity can feel anonymous at first. That's normal. You're in the in-between, where the story is dissolving but the new story isn't fully formed yet. So aim for a different metric. Measure your growth by how quickly you return to awareness, not by how perfectly you never crave. The goal isn't a life with no urges. The goal is a life where urges no longer decide who you are. Practically, this is where you build tiny identity anchors. A morning moment where you feel your breath before you touch a screen. A short walk where you let your body remember it can move without chasing relief. A nightly check-in where you name what you felt today without judging it. These are not productivity hacks. They are identity signals. They tell the nervous system, I am the kind of person who stays with my life, and if you slip, the contract still matters. A slip is not a prophecy, it's data. The ego will rush to turn it into shame and identity because that restores the old story. Your job is to keep it an event. Learn, adjust, return. That is what a new self does. Impactful conclusion. The ego survives through repetition. You awaken through choice. Now you can see the structure. The ego uses addiction not because it loves destruction, but because it loves continuity. Repetition keeps the old identity alive. Same ritual, same story, same self. And the ego prefers a familiar prison to an unfamiliar freedom. But you are not here to remain consistent. You are here to become conscious. So the next time an urge rises, don't treat it like a command. Treat it like a doorway. One door leads back to the familiar identity, the self built from survival. The other leads into the unknown, where a new self begins to form. And the difference between those doors is not willpower. It's awareness in a single moment. Pause, breathe, ask the question that breaks the spell. What identity is this protecting? Then ask the second question, softer and more powerful. What would I have to feel if I didn't escape right now? Stay with the answer long enough for it to become real. You'll notice the urge is a wave. It rises, peaks, and passes. What remains is something the ego can't manufacture: choice. This is how change happens. Not by hating yourself into improvement, but by turning unconscious repetition into conscious response. You let the protector speak, but you stop letting it drive. You keep its mission, safety, and retire its outdated method, escape. The ego survives through repetition. You awaken through choice. Every urge is a doorway. The ego asks you to repeat the past. Awareness asks you to become someone new. And here's the question I want you to sit with after the video ends. What identity has your addiction been protecting? If you can name it, you can outgrow it. If you want a practical way to seal this, make it personal. Say it out loud when the craving appears. This is the old identity asking for repetition. Then answer softly, I choose awareness. I choose the life that costs me discomfort and pays me truth. And before you leave, take 1 minute and write a single sentence to yourself. Not a confession, a recognition. My addiction has been protecting the identity of us, by. Fill the blank with the most honest word you can find. That sentence is not shame, it is clarity. And clarity is where the new story begins. And I want you to notice something. The ego always speaks in urgency. Now, tonight, just this once, the awakening self speaks in honesty. What is true here? What is this moment asking of me? That difference is everything. Urgency wants you unconscious. Honesty wants you awake. So don't chase a perfect life. Chase a conscious moment. If you can win one moment, you can win the next. And when you string those moments together, the ego's kingdom collapses without a fight because it can't survive in clear light. If this hit a nerve, don't scroll away and numb it. Stay with it for 10 seconds and let it land. Then write the most honest answer you can. What identity has your addiction been protecting? One sentence. That single sentence can be the start of a different life. You don't need to become someone else overnight. You only need to stop giving the old identity automatic permission. That is enough to begin. Let this be the moment you notice the craving and choose consciousness anyway. One breath, one gap, one choice, then the next. Right now, choose again.